Hello and welcome everybody. Here is Tasha and Roman. We are welcome you to Holistic Underdogs, a unique video blog where passion for dogs meets the realms of canine anthropology, secure attachment, and holistic care in our modern dog world. Hosted by Roman and Tasha, avid dog lovers and keen observers of canine behavior, this video blog is not just a series of videos, it's an educational journey into understanding and improving of our best friends.
Um,
Well, this is where the moment I have to click the button. We'll figure it out. Hi. Hi, Tasha. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. Are you?
We got a lot of underdog stuff to talk about today. And first of all, introduce yourself a little bit so people who don't know about us get kind of a picture of what we
Okay,
do and how we do it.
okay. I'm Tasha. I'm in the UK. I'm a dog behaviourist based in Lincolnshire, but I work internationally. And I've got four dogs. So I've got Diesel, Coda, Django, and Zombie.
Awesome. So I'm Roman with Holistic Dog Training. I'm a holistic behavior consultant, trauma informed, coming from a secure attachment um, perspective, and we are dear colleagues. So we met each other because we have the same interests and basically same approach. And as more that we talk, it's like, are we brothers and sisters kind of thing? So yeah, I'm very excited um, to doing this with you because I've known over time how passionate you are working with dogs and how passionate you are to go beyond that edge of classical behaviorism and classical dog training and classical perception of dogs. And so one thing that that stood up is not only because of your educational background, you're literally an education vacuum cleaner. Whatever comes in front of you is gonna suck it up and bring it down to the dogs. You're very good in working with people and bringing that knowledge in a level that people can understand and appreciate, right? It's not just you being smart and everybody else is wrong. It's actually you help them educate. And
Yeah,
I think the reason why we did this holistic underdogs is to bring that education and our experience to the dog lovers and to people who are dog enthusiasts, to people who says, my dog is not just a dog. My dog is my family. Is part of me. It's something, an expression that me and my dog are both together in a relationship that is beyond me being the leader or the pack leader and he's just the animal and my slave, whatever. And yeah, that's why I thought we should do this.
yeah.
So let's talk about what we're doing.
Okay.
Um, I'll let you talk.
So I think we're trying to get the message out there more about holistic dog behaviour and modification because it's not training, it's education. Because if we look at our dogs as family rather than being a pet or a part of the household, we start to see them as family, and then it's about how we can gel together, move forward together, and understand like their setup, if that makes sense. Because a lot of people think holistic means herbs and voodoo, and there is nothing scientific, but it is scientific. And so we've got a deep understanding. So when we first speak to people and say, oh, I've got a puppy, and the puppy's like got separation anxiety, or they're chewing everything, or they're doing an unwanted behavior for that family, we can then say, okay, so what traumas has your dog experienced? And they go, nothing, they're a puppy. And then we're like, well, actually, the first trauma is being separated from that secure attachment to their mother and their siblings. And then people are like, oh, okay, I didn't actually know that. So being holistic means moving forward with the dog and like being a symbiosis with the relationship rather than my dog's doing an unwanted behavior, so we need to nip it in the bud.
Right, right. So I like that you put it this way because we have to see as the dog human relationship as a system and not just the dog and the person, right?
Mhm.
And I think people already up, Luis. Um, Hi there. Thanks for joining. And one thing that you said nicely here is that in that system, we have to see how the system works entirely, how the individual systems, environmental factors affect us.
Yeah,
We have to snap out of the idea that a dog is a dog and the dog behaves like his genetics. There's so many environmental factors around that we barely can grasp what actually affects my dog. Like
yeah,
people get shocked if I tell them, you know, how is your EMF pollution going on in the house? I'm like, MF pollution? What's that? Is your Wi-Fi device and your next to your dog's bed? Like I can hear my Wi-Fi, it buzzes in my ears. If I can hear it, my dog can hear it too. So
yeah,
all these individual things affect my dog's behavior. It affects my relationship. If my dog is miserable, I'm miserable, right? And also I like the emphasis, on the human animal bond because we think there is just a responsibility of people take care of the dogs, and there is one responsibility of the dogs to do what people want, but that's not a healthy relationship. So we do
yeah,
work on bringing that human animal bond in a healthy way where there is mutual respect, right? And where this relationship is not just
absolutely.
one sided, and where sometimes we as people we have to help the dog reach his potential, and we have to
Yeah,
learn how to get there. It's not about
yeah.
training. Training is maybe 10% of everything that we have to work on the dog, but we would talk about that. So tell me about um, holistic means integrating various disciplines because it's not just positive reinforcement. And no,
Yeah,
we're not driving a Prius, and we're not
yeah,
giving only treats. So,
yeah.
fill me in a little bit. What's for our viewers today?
Okay. So with holistic based education, it's more evolved. I think that's the proper word. It's more evolved than positive reinforcement training because it's not about asking the dog to do a behaviour and then we're clicking and treating or withholding a treat if they don't do the behaviour. It's about understanding the dog and their need and the function of the behaviour. So, why is the behaviour occurring? And then we can look at the emotions and then start addressing the emotions to then begin the healing. And for us, the way that our dogs learn is like, for example, if they run into a door frame, it's going to hurt, but we're not making them run into the door frame. They learn like we do as children about consequences. So, like as a child, one of the earliest memories is probably getting a paper cut, and it's the same thing. It's not that anybody physically hurt you; the paper hurt you because of the setup of the paper, and that's the way that it. Like we move forward with holistic, and then we look at medical needs. So, is there anything occurring physiologically which could be contributing to the behaviour or the dynamic of the dog, and then that way we can then work within a multidisciplinary team and pull in hydrotherapists or canine chiropractors, physios, and
Right,
people who are going to be attuned to that need.
right. Just want to make clear, even though you have some of those abilities to do this yourself, I usually refer them out. So how do we get to the result means we have to look at the dog, understanding all these individual disciplines and how they can affect the dog, then doing an assessment and find out for my dog to reach where he needs to go, I can use this toolbox of different disciplines and navigate them in the proper order. Yes, we have to rule out medical conditions. Great. Here's an idea what you guys can focus on when you go into the veterinarian, making sure we rule those out because it seems like these issues may affect your dog. And because of the general image of the behavior assessment, we can see we have a tendencies of the dog being itchy and which affects the dog reacting to your kid who wants to hug the dog but the dog feels itchy about that and he's starts reacting about it. So and also at helping people looking into the underlying conditions, not just treating the itching, treating the leaky guts, for example, or the genetic damage that has been done, or the dog has a thyroid issues, and the dog has other issues that we don't know of. We need to rule those out. And of course, maybe the food is really low quality. So we can knock them out in the very beginning, and help people go to the right places at the right time, getting the right answer. I have many people who go to the vet. Oh, my dog is fine. Did you guys do a thyroid test? Huh? Well, the dog bit someone. The dog is moody. The dog is ups and downs, and it's not about just being healthy or not. Maybe we have to dig a little bit deeper and see what happens underneath of that. Right, I like that. But also I like that you're looking also into nutritional aspect, because nutrition is just not food. We use food as a healing process. If a dog doesn't eat healthy, he will get stressed. If the dog doesn't get enough nutrients, he's going to get stressed. If we don't have nutrient availability, even though we're feeding high quality food, we think, but in reality, the ingredients don't make the quality. The ingredients make the ingredients, and the nutrient availability is what makes the quality. And we need to know about those things. So this part of our conversation, I stopped moving my hands a lot. I'm very excited about that. Is to keep people educated to making informed decisions.
Yeah.
The more informed decisions you do, the safer your dog will be in general. The other thing that I would like to share is that in that process of holistic approach, we have to help in the development of emotional and social skills, which you know better than I do, that if you don't have a dog that is not socially adequate equipped, and especially you have also a wolf dog, well, like, wait, what? And you have a social one. Like, how did that happen? And we see that how important it is to have that holistic approach, and how to create this emotional intelligence and empathy and patience, and teaching the dog social skills. It's not something the dog comes born with. This is something the dog has to learn to function within a frame. So if the family code of conduct doesn't work, and you cannot convey the dogs that knowledge and experience, how to handle his feelings and his emotions, and how to respond to a trigger, and eventually refer to you and says, hey, I'm being bullied right now. And of course, he's not talking about that, but he learned how to show his body language and his feelings clearly to you, so you can help the dog and intervene in that dispute eventually. So,
Yeah.
a holistic approach is a balanced way. And I'm not taking the word balance from balance training. The balance is bringing the dog into a comfort level, because unbalanced is easily to happen with environmental triggers with a new dog in the family. How do we bring the dog back to balance? So it's not about us behaving balanced, it's about the dog feeling balanced. Now I said it. Somebody had a question. Yes, fill us with questions. Uh, Louis says, interesting. My two other dogs have shown sign of missing one other boy. See, yeah, right. Sees the reactive behavior in Louis worse since Saturday. Yeah. Um, so one thing that I notice is that we're diving out of, um, let's call it, black age or dark age of dog training. And so we want to make sure that we're promoting a mental and physical health. We went down hill after a certain period of time. I call it now the Kellogg syndrome, where we think junk food and highly processed food are healthier than healthy foods. And so emotional health has to be priority. We want to make sure the dog is emotionally healthy and is in physical health. So tell me about that a little bit, because you're kind of like into those things a lot,
Okay.
around mental and physical health of dogs. So what do we do from a holistic approach?
Okay. So, for example, when Yeah, so you've got a puppy, and they're learning about the world in the different environments, and they're going to find things scary, and they go through fear phases and the critical periods. So we, as a parent, have a choice about how we're going to help our puppy through this. So some people get annoyed that their puppy is afraid of something, but holistically, we give guardians the tools to understand how to help the dog to move forward. So, for example, when Django was a puppy, and obviously winters in England, it's brutal. It's really dark at night straight away, and there's a bin bag next to the bin, which was full of rubbish. And Django freaked out. He's like, "Whoa, that's really scary. The bin bag across the road is terrifying." So I went up to it and kicked it. And he was like, "Oh, wasn't scared anyway." And it's about the way that we approach things with our dogs. So if they're scared of something, comforting them, showing them what the thing is that they're actually scared of, and letting them explore it in their own time and express curiosity and let them develop and meet their own needs. So when people we say to people about dogs can have traumas, we can actually avoid the traumas. We can avoid the action becoming a trauma. So, for example, going back to the door frame, if the dog runs into the door frame, we can comfort them like you would with a child who's fell off a slide at the playground, for example. So, it's about our actions can help to prevent trauma and create a healthy processing for the dog mentally. And going to Louis with saying about Louis been more reactive since losing the other dog. Very sorry for your loss, by the way. um, so in that we've got to accept that dogs do have a grieving process, because if we take human brain and a dog brain and put them side by side, they are essentially the same. We have exactly the same setup. So we have to respect, just as humans mourn, also dogs do. So at the moment, it might not be the time to take him out for a walk, expose him to different things, just letting him be at home and mourn and process the loss of his sibling. Just like humans need to stop and process the loss of a family member as well, because that's what we have to remember as well, is that dogs see the people within their family as a family, just like we do. So we obviously get really, really upset and heartbroken when we lose a dog, but equally, so does the dog. They're upset because they've lost a family member too. And I don't think there's enough emphasis on the dog's mental well-being and how much the dog feels, because if we break it down, like, dogs are so empathetic, and dogs are brilliant problem solvers, and they've got all these skill sets that I don't think we as humans have evolved enough to recognize yet.
So true. And we miss that part very often. We miss the part where dogs can have mental health issues. But also, we notice that some people just offer medical support, which is not always helpful if you don't understand the underlying reason for that.
Hmm.
And yeah, dogs have grief, and just because they have grief doesn't mean they have to be on antidepressant. We need to help them out with that system to feel more comfortable making choices on their own, and maybe they have to learn how to build new relationships. Some dogs don't have that experiences to make new relationships because, for example, when we see people just adopting two puppies like litter mates, they don't recognize that those litter mates, they start bonding so closely together, they don't learn new relationships, and they're like monosocialized. They only take the cues of the other dogs. They don't see the necessity to bond with the people. So we have a, a mental problem here that we don't see until they start fighting with each other because there is no parenting intervention. And then we call it Littermate syndrome. Okay. Anyway, the other thing that I really appreciate coming from a holistic perspective is the ethical and, let's say, compassionate approach. It's not kind of like dog is wrong, not need to correct it. A, we have an ethical obligation to help those dogs being humane, right? And so
Yeah.
using ethical training methods, not ethical to us, ethical to them. They are the receivers. So if I think my approach is ethical and your dog doesn't see that, then it's not ethical, right? If I force my dog with treats to do something that I want, that is not in the best interest of my dog, I do believe that's not ethical.
Hmm.
I know people were like, what? Yes, let me explain that. Yes, we can have an obedient dog, but we can bring that obedience to a direction that is not emotionally supportive to the dog. For example, a simple example, we're walking with the dog and the dog starts being reactive because he feels threatened about the other dog on the other side of the street, and we command the dog to sit, and then we give him a treat for that.
Hmm.
What's wrong with it, right? Well, from an ethical perspective, we see that forcing the dog into a stagnancy, into a sit position, the moment the dog goes into a fight flight response, forcing the dog to sit creates an incomplete survival response.
Yeah.
Oops, we didn't see that coming. So forcing the dog to sit, who is on the leash, and you know how people do, they kind of let the hand helps a little bit with that, and the other hand helps a little bit with that, and once the dog compliant, then we feel the obligation to give the dog a treat. It's kind of like one on your head and one on the nail kind of thing. It's not right, and we have to become aware of that. So for example, if you compare that with children, I know some people who says, what, you're comparing dogs with children? Yes, I do, because dogs have the emotional capacity of a 3 to 5 year old, depending on emotional evolution. And at the same time, they do feel justice, and they do feel empathy, and they do feel all these things a child feels. And if you tell the child, no, we're not going today for ice cream, the child, you don't love me anymore. So there is a connection with the relationship here, how the child and the dog feels about our information that we give the dog. So if the dog wants to run or to attack, and we force the dog to sit instead, then the problem is not resolved. We adding another problem on top of the existing problem. And of course, I'm not telling you let the dog fight it out. No, but the dog needs to move. So move away from the problem, help the dog get out of that system, and being compassionate understands that the dog actually struggles, and you don't be victimized here because the dog is the one who is a problem, not you. Yes, you are the effect of the dog's problem, but if you only fix your problem by forcing the dog to sit, the dog's problem is not fixed. Like, how would it look like for a parent who addresses his problem and not addressing the child's problem that causes the parent problem? I hope that makes sense, my English,
Yeah,
broken English, okay?
absolutely.
And so we need to see that from that perspective, and how positive reinforcement is a good idea and is supposed to happen, but we have to be very careful. What exactly are we rewarding here? Are we rewarding the dog being compliant to our needs, or do we meet the dog's needs and then we reward the dog to make the right choices? Are we forcing
Absolutely.
those choices, or are we giving the dog options? It would be unethical to punish a dog and not having choices. It's unethical for you to
Absolutely.
drive down the street and for no reason you get a ticket and you don't know why. Well, you're supposed to know that you're supposed not to speed. Well, what's the speed limit? Oh, I'm not telling you that. I don't let you know until you speed. That's
Hmm.
unethical. I cannot correct the dog for something he doesn't know he can do or not do, because usually humans do have miscommunication. The way they open the door, the dog runs out, and then they yank the dog back in again. Well, you invited him out. Why are you punishing the dog for that? Well, he's supposed to know to stay inside because I thought about it. Well, if you don't educate your dog, how would he know about that? An educated
Hmm.
dog is, what is the better choice? What is the most effective choice of yours? Option A, zero reward. Option B, lots of reward. And don't get me wrong, people think, well, how do you correct the bad behavior? Well, again, from an ethical perspective, what's wrong with the dog's behavior? Just because you don't like it doesn't mean the behavior is wrong, because the dog will make choices that are in the best and highest good from what he believes is the right choice. So if
Hmm.
you don't like that choice, educate the dog that there's another choice. I
Hmm.
cannot say you're making wrong choices if you don't have an alternative.
Hmm.
I cannot say you're wrong if I don't give you the right.
Yeah.
Then it's not only about me because I believe it's wrong and you don't have to know about that. I just punish you for doing wrong until you figure out what's right.
Yeah.
That's just unethical. And it's not compassionate because I don't see what the dog is actually struggling with,
Yeah.
right? So let's summarize here. I'll
So,
give the mic to you.
so holistic behavior education is all about education for the dog, and it's about you have to do a lot of work on yourself and recognize that humans as a species are typically selfish, and they have their own needs, and you get brainwashed into ideas about a dog's behavior is supposed to be XYZ because of the media and the different things that like people are brainwashed with. But when you step back away from the brainwashing and say, actually, this dog is my family member and I want my dog to flourish as a family member, that's when we start to see guilt coming in. And you go through a transformational stage. I think I've seen it with guardians that I've worked with, and you start to see guilt and depression and are upset. So it's just like, and then it sounds really far fetched, but it isn't. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous when they have to go through a 10-step program. It's exactly the same for Dog Guardian. And I know that Roman and my other colleagues have gone through this stage themselves where they used to be a balance trainer because that's what they thought was right. But then they went through a transformational stage of recognizing that actually that isn't right. And it's not about punishing the person, it's about accepting the person and embracing them and helping them to develop. And if we can do that with a human being, we can also do that with a dog. So holistically based isn't hoodoo and herbs or anything unethical like that. It's about bringing everything that we possibly can to help this dog to be as comfortable as possible. So, like Roman said about you don't make your dog sit on a walk while they're facing something scary. Well, no, because that isn't a desensitization process. And I think that's what we've moved away from in the positive world as well, is that dogs are becoming flooded, but it's okay because it's desensitization, where it's not okay because we develop trauma.
At any
And the next
cost.
thing, yeah, and then the next thing that we see, because we've worked there, is we see dogs in rescues and shelters because the human didn't meet the need and the emotion of the dog, and then the dog got blamed for it. So it's about
Right, right.
humans having to step back, putting the ego in the bin, and saying, "Okay, I'm a brand new sheet of paper. Teach me and educate me," but allowing your dog to teach you and educate you as well, because who cares if your dog's barking at another dog in the street? What's the big deal? Barking's an expression of a need. Some breeds are predisposed to barking, or who cares if your dog has zoomies and has high energy, or is really communicative like a husky? Because again, it's
Right,
that
right.
brainwashing from the media that says, "Oh no, that's totally wrong." Well, it's not wrong, is it? Like before we came on, Django was howling and winding his sister up, and I said sorry to you. He's like, "Don't say sorry to me. I'm a dog person."
Yeah, I see this very often when we do online sessions, and I think you too. When in the moment of the session, a person who has a cat, suddenly the cat walks through the screen. It's like every time I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I was like, "Don't say sorry." Every cat does that. It's kind of like a Zoom cat. She just zooms through the cat through the Zoom session. I think I should start collecting screenshots and make a video out of it because it's really funny. Um, I feel first of all, let me introduce our Facebook page, which is facebook.com Holistic Underdogs. Very simple to type. Did I type it right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can follow us there. And we want to prove that you can address complex behaviors without the use of force. Not
yeah,
only because we have done it for years. I mean, I'm working already 17 years in that process, and I'm coming from the other side, right? I'm a crossover, but I'm a complete crossover. I'm not a crossover-ish, right? But some people are. And we can in our show we can take in examples and analyze them and break them down. So you're welcome to send us your behavior issues, maybe a short video with a detailed description about what you guys struggle with, and we kind of can knock it off a little bit through the video consultation and on our live, and help you see what we see and how we see it, and
yeah,
that will help us a little bit see the different option, the different side of. There's not even the same volume here. The other thing that I notice is that some people struggling with concepts. So we want to make sure that we help people understand the framework and what is included. When we say, I need to be a leader to my dog, we need to understand benevolent leadership rather than be the pack leader. If we say, my dog is wrong, we need to understand the complexity of the dog's decision making. So while some dogs will say, oh, my dog is just a thing, and the more you put in, the more you get out, I would say the dog's behavior is like a
Yeah.
jigsaw puzzle. And the more complex the dog is, the more colors you have in there, it takes longer to assemble that image. But we have to see all these individual pieces of the jig puzzle, and they're so entwined and interconnected. You need to be in the right place, in the right spot to create that healthy image that we're looking for. We want to see the image before we address the dog issue. We need to understand all these individual jigsaw puzzles. Where do they belong? And we start creating with the frame, and then we can working inwards try to understand how does the dog world looks like from the dog's perspective, rather than only listening to the caregiver who says my dog is aggressive, fix it. Well, if you see the dog aggressive, then the dog has a reason for that. We need to understand the reason for that, because if I help the dog's reason, you don't see the aggression anymore. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And we have to help those guardian people who love their dogs to get the tools that they need to see that,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of biased thinking and myths in place that we don't even have enough time to fix those myths, because it seems that scientifically people who hear the first idea, they get stuck with that idea. The second idea that eventually is the right one is not being accepted as right, because the first one was the first one I heard. This is the first one I associated with,
Yeah.
right? So if I say big dogs are dangerous, or I'll take that as a default. And
Yeah.
then you have to prove me that they're not dangerous. Who proved you that they're dangerous? Right? I had
Exactly.
a class the other day, like yesterday, and the question was, are guardian dogs aggressive breeds? Like the livestock guardian dogs. And I'm like, no, they're not. But yes, they are. They are showing aggression. I was like, aggression? Guardian dogs have been bred to be non-lethal, which means they show off and show this aggression to deter, without killing, without attacking, without getting physical contact. So are they aggressive? They show aggression, but they are not aggressive.
Yeah.
Can those dogs show problematic behaviors? Yes, but that's a different level. Genetically speaking, they are non lethal. They don't want to get involved. They want to stay out of it. And they do all their repertoire of behaviors that imitate that type of aggression that other animals and people are scared of. Yay, we want that. And so we need to get the image of the puzzle first.
Mm.
And so this is what we want to convey. We need to kind of establish that framework and help people find that framework, and also think away from the lima, less intrusive, minimally aversive. We need to get out of that aversion, and we need to get out of that force free. We identify ourselves with force and just removing the force, but not changing the intention of why we want the dog to change behavior, why we
Yeah.
want the dog to feel different. So we need to get away from this anthropocentric concept and become a relationship centric concept. The dogs who are dog centric are the 800 million dogs who are out there doing their dog thing without having any human relationships other than coexisting in the same village or coexisting in the same group of people they're being cared by, but not specifically having a human dog relationship. They just have a coexisting relationship. And I think we should take that in consideration, that we barely know a lot about dogs. Recent studies come up more and more and more, but some of those studies are relying to old concepts
Absolutely.
and being perpetuated. So we have a healing process out of the dominance hierarchy model that some of these studies have been created and reinforced and republished. and come from a new concept that dogs are sentient beings. They make decisions. They have morals and ethical concepts, not the level of a human ethical and moral concept, but they do have, because they have a complex social structure. They have to make decisions constantly whether or not to do certain things. We agreed on different scenarios where dog actually go and get help to get things done. That needs a very complex mindset and social concept. And of course, in our show, we will have also specialists from different fields that share the same framework, and we would like to invite them. Yeah, that was it. So I know it was a little bit of out of the ordinary conversation that we usually expect to hear from a live video about dogs, but I hope you guys learned something from it. We learn from your responses and we learn from your questions. So feel free to ask questions. We monitor our posts. So if you see this video in our Facebook group or in a Facebook post or on YouTube, feel free to share your concepts, your ideas. Come with an empty cup of tea. That will be very helpful rather than coming with a full cup of tea and try to pour it on us. Most of us have been through that process. We Me, for example, I was being believed that, a dog who behaves bad needs to be corrected because I was raised like that. So I'm coming from that field as well. I can see what people are struggling with. So we want to clear that field, make it kind of feel more comfortable to talk. So I would say we are a safe space to share your ideas
Yeah.
and your questions. We're not bashing you for not knowing, because we are here to educate and share our experience. And we can back it up. How about that? Whatever we say, we can back it up. Sometimes we
Yeah.
can say a grammar mistake and I cannot back it up with Oxford. That would be me. But otherwise, if you guys have questions, throw it out there. See what you get back. Good. Tasha, thank you so much for spending time today and taking time and share with our people um, your experience. And
It's
I'm
my
so
pleasure.
proud that people hang out a little bit here. So we would like to meet regularly, and maybe in the comments you can share your ideas. What would be a good time for guys to chat, hanging out? See that as having being in a coffee shop or a tea shop and hang out in a good time that fits everyone. We are multinational, so Tasha is in England. I'm in US. We're actually barely opposite. We are in the west coast of US, and you guys are in UK. So no matter where you are, share your information. Say, hey, like, hey, I'm from here. I want to see how far we reach out here. And I know
Yeah.
Facebook is not often very helpful to sharing things, but you're welcome to share it with a comment maybe. And the more questions you put into it, the more also this post being shared. So thank you again, everyone. Tasha
Thank you.
and Roman are appreciative for you guys hanging out with us. And it was today. Welcome to Holistic Underdogs.